It's January 8th, 2012. The Broncos and Steelers are facing off in the wild card round of the playoffs at Sports Authority Field in Denver. The Broncos offense is lining up for the first play of overtime. But Denver's journey to this point wasn't easy, so we would be remiss if we didn't take a few minutes to rewind. People are torn on this man, quarterback Tim Tebow. He has been fighting an uphill battle against his doubters since he entered the league, despite his very accomplished time with the Florida Gators. The Gators won the national championship in 2006, Tebow's freshman year. Although Tebow at the time was used primarily as a rusher, he took over the starting quarterback job in 2007 and became the first sophomore to win the Heisman Trophy, throwing for over 3,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. In 2008, the Gators won another national championship, this time with Tebow at the helm. And heading into the offseason, most people expected Tebow to declare for the NFL draft. He instead elected to return for his senior season. Tebow led the 13-1 Gators to a win at the Sugar Bowl and broke Herschel Walker's SEC rushing touchdown record in the process. He was the kind of talent that's difficult to pass on come draft time, but not everyone was sold on his ability to translate his skills to the NFL level. The Broncos, however, believed in him enough to select him in the first round of the 2010 draft, though it would be hard to imagine that even they expected to be here, in only his second season, tied with a chance to move on to the divisional round. The previous season was disappointing from all angles. They went 4-12 with rookie Tebow backing up the starting quarterback, Kyle Orton, and the season ended mired in controversy. It was discovered that Broncos video coordinator, Steve Scarnecchia, recorded a 49ers practice. Scarnecchia, who worked for the Patriots during Spygate, then brought the footage to head coach Josh McDaniels, who refused to view it. But following an investigation, both Scarnecchia and McDaniels were fired. McDaniels both for failing to report the incident and for overall poor performance. In the offseason, the Broncos hired their former Super Bowl winning quarterback, John Elway, as the executive VP of football operations, who then in turn hired this guy, head coach John Fox. In Fox's first season as head coach, the Broncos won the division. He was just the second Broncos coach to do so in his first season, and the first since 1977. But that title didn't come easy. Denver lost their last 3 games of the 2011 season and finished with an 8-8 record, as did the Chargers and the Raiders. Denver ended up taking the division based on their record against common opponents. So the Broncos snuck into the playoffs, and then they find themselves here, in overtime, a familiar spot. During the regular season, the Broncos had 3 games decided in overtime, and they won each one, all with Tebow starting at quarterback, having replaced Kyle Orton at halftime in Week 5. Tebow's first start was on the road against the Dolphins in Week 7. They entered the game with a 1-4 record, and it appeared to be another lost season. But with just under 6 minutes remaining in the fourth, down 15-0, Denver got a little bit of hope. After a touchdown, an onside kick recovery, and another quick touchdown, Tebow rushed for a 2-point conversion to tie the game with 17 seconds remaining. A Matt Prater field goal in overtime sealed the win for Denver.
He got it!
In Week 12, the Broncos were facing the division rival Chargers, and a Matt Prater field goal with under 2 minutes to play tied the game to send it to overtime. With 33 seconds remaining in OT, Prater did it again to end the game. It was a divisional win that proved to be vital to Denver's playoff hopes. But they weren't done with the late game heroics just yet. In Week 14, the Broncos faced a 10-0 deficit with under 3 minutes to go. And again, Tebow threw a late game touchdown and Prater kicked a game-tying field goal with only seconds remaining. One last overtime field goal from Prater saw the Broncos take their 3rd overtime win of the season. So, we find ourselves in overtime again. But how did we get here? Another late game surge by the Broncos offense? Actually, this time, the late game heroics came from Pittsburgh. The 12-4 Steelers, 11 months removed from losing Super Bowl 45, entered this game with their sights set on another Super Bowl appearance. But injuries on both sides of the ball have made them vulnerable, including Rashard Mendenhall, the team leader in touchdowns, who tore his ACL in Week 17, Ben Roethlisberger, who was playing through an ankle injury, and a slew of absent defensive players, one of whom is safety Ryan Clark, whose sickle cell trait poses health risks in Denver's high altitude. At the start of the second quarter, the Broncos had an injury of their own to deal with. Eric Decker, the team's leading receiver, went down with an MCL injury following a low hit. This spelled disaster for the Broncos, who needed every bit of offensive firepower at their disposal. It also moved Demaryius Thomas, who has had injury issues himself, into the #1 receiver role. In February of 2011, Thomas tore his Achilles tendon. There were worries that he would miss the entire year, but prior to the start of the season, to everyone's surprise, he was ready to go. And then in his first practice back, Thomas broke his pinky finger and was sidelined for the first 5 games of the season. But here he is, ready to pick up the slack for the injured Decker. And in the first play following Decker's injury, Thomas torched Steelers cornerback Ike Taylor for a 51-yard gain. That reception set up this beautiful 30-yard touchdown pass to Eddie Royal. And on the following Broncos drive, Thomas, again covered by Taylor, hauled in a season-long 58-yard reception. Thomas had 109 yards on 2 catches in 1 quarter against the Steelers defense that hadn't allowed a 100-yard receiver all season. The Steelers had a chance to put some points on the board before halftime, but a bad snap by center Doug Legursky, who's playing in place of injured Pro Bowl center Marquise Pouncey, forced the Steelers to punt. The Broncos entered the half up 20-6 after putting up all 20 of their points in the second quarter. The second half, however, was all Steelers. An integral part of their success was running back Isaac Redman, who, after only starting 1 game during the regular season, took the place of the injured Mendenhall. Redman had a 32-yard run in the third that set up this 1-yard touchdown to Mike Wallace. Then in the fourth, Redman again came up with a long run that eventually led to a field goal. The Steelers were now only down a touchdown with 10 minutes to play. The following drive, the Broncos handed it off to running back Willis McGahee. McGahee took over the starting job when last season's starter Noshawn Moreno went down with an injury. He took advantage of the opportunity and rushed for over 1,000 yards and was named team captain after the release of Kyle Orton. His number was called yet again, with a fourth quarter lead, but this time he lost the football. The fumble was forced by Ryan Clark's replacement, Ryan Mundy. The fumble led to a 31-yard touchdown pass to Jericho Cotchery to tie the game with just under 4 minutes remaining. The Steelers got the ball back with 1.5 minutes left, but this time the Broncos defense stepped up. 3 of the Broncos' 5 sacks came on the final drive, including this one to force a fumble that Pittsburgh recovered, and this one on the final play of regulation to send it to overtime.
We're going to overtime.
The Steelers called tails on the coin toss, and heads gave Denver the ball to start overtime. But this is the first playoff game to head to overtime since a recent rule change. Prior to the 2010 season, the Broncos would be able to end the game with a field goal, but the Steelers, who have not given up a touchdown since the second quarter, will have a chance as long as they can keep the Broncos out of the end zone on this drive. So here we are, a team that barely squeaked into the playoffs, with a quarterback many didn't believe to be NFL caliber, has a chance to knock out a wounded juggernaut 1 year removed from a Super Bowl appearance. Demaryius Thomas is lined up against Ike Taylor once again, and with the safety showing blitz, Taylor will have no help behind him. Welcome to a moment in history.
The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stick arm got him free to the 30, to the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first play of overtime.
The Broncos lost in the next round to the Patriots, and then they traded Tebow to the Jets, where he proved all the doubters right. Like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments how you feel about your everyday life.